Hey guys, tonight we journey somewhere lush, misty, and permanently squishy underfoot. You're in ancient Java. Yes, that Java. The island draped in volcanoes and tangled in jungle vines, where even the air feels like it's been simmering in a clay pot. You're not in a city, not near a palace. You're just a traveler, slogging barefoot along a muddy footpath carved through endless rice fields, wondering how the heck anyone stayed dry before Gore-Tex. The rain isn't coming. It's already here. A steady, almost polite drizzle at first. Then suddenly, the sky decides to dump an entire cloud's worth of tropical mood right onto your head. You glance up. No plane trails, no cement, just clouds and birds, and zero umbrellas. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The trail winds along the edge of a sawa, those ancient stepped rice paddies, their waterlogged terraces glowing with green. The smell? A mix of wet earth, crushed lemongrass, and smoke drifting from some distant hearth. You duck under a low branch, avoiding a spider's web that looks like it's been crocheted by a drunk weaver. And then, you see it. A farmer, knee-deep in a flooded paddy, moving like the rain doesn't exist. His only protection? A palm frond cut clean from the tree, held casually over one shoulder. It's not even tied down. Just there. Soggy, swaying slightly but doing the job. This isn't just a fluke. Palm fronds, particularly from the tal or sugar palm, were nature's ready-made umbrellas for countless generations of Javanese folks. Broad, ribbed, and waterproof enough to earn their spot in the rain toolkit, they were slashed, stacked, and carried daily. Some were tucked under arms like newspapers. Others were bent into makeshift hoods. If you were crafty, you could even layer them into a cone, fasten it with a bit of bamboo twine, and boom, instant rain hat with an eco-chic flair. Of course, these fronds didn't last forever. They'd rot, flop, or snap, depending on how dramatically you waved them around. But hey, if you're surrounded by 1,000 palm trees, who's complaining? You shuffle closer to a village. Roofs now come into view. Tall, tiered, and made of alang-alang grass, thick enough to muffle rain into a whisper. These aren't just roofs. They're survival tech. Angled like origami for runoff, they're proof that the Javanese didn't just avoid umbrellas. They designed their lives around never needing them. Historians still argue whether the island's aversion to umbrellas was philosophical or just practical. Was it a reverence for nature? Or did they simply decide, meh, wet is fine? What's certain is that daily life flowed around the monsoon, not against it. Footpaths were built with drainage in mind. Homes were lifted on stilts, and ceremonies. They kept going, rain or shine. People just accepted moisture as a permanent co-star. A rooster shrieks nearby, possibly protesting his latest involuntary bath. You pass a group of kids laughing as they race fallen leaves down a drainage ditch. One boy holds what looks like a banana leaf over his head, but it's clearly just for style. Half of him is soaked, and he's loving it. You reach the village proper. Chickens scatter. Somewhere, a gamelan chime pulses gently through the air, and in the corner of a stall, a stack of folded fronds sits for sale, each carefully cut and bound. Next to them, bamboo rain capes that look like someone crossbred a poncho with a sushi mat. They creak when you pick one up. You drape it over your shoulders. Smells like last week's festival and wood smoke. Feels like protection. Not from rain exactly, but from forgetting where you are. Java, in this moment, isn't about dryness. It's about adapting, about letting the sky do its thing while you carry on. Because rain isn't the enemy here. It's just Tuesday. And you? You're learning to walk like you were born here, barefoot, damp, but completely unbothered. You don't make it 10 steps into the village before a soft splash under your heel reminds you. You're not wearing shoes. Again. But it doesn't matter. The mud is warm, almost buttery between your toes, and somehow that's comforting. Up ahead, a woman balances a basket of shallots on her head, one hand casually propping a giant leaf above her brow. This one's different. Longer, glossier, with veins that look like nature's own roadmap. That's a banana leaf, wide enough to cover a shoulder and 2 gossiping neighbors if you angle it right. Here in ancient Java, umbrellas weren't gadgets. They were gestures. A flick of the wrist, a curl of the fingers around a stem, a quick tug from the tree as clouds rolled in. No hinges, no spokes, just instinct and improvisation. Banana leaves were everyone's go-to, abundant, flexible, and comically oversized. The trick was in the fold. One wrong crease, and you'd end up with a funnel instead of a shield. Excellent for watering your armpits, but useless for keeping your tunic dry. The leaf had to be snapped just so, creating a natural groove that sent rain down the back, not the front. You learn this the hard way. A group of teenage boys huddle beneath the eaves of a warung, an open-air stall selling hot broth and tapioca cakes. They laugh at you gently. One of them tosses you a leaf like a bartender sliding a coaster. You nod sheepishly. Welcome to the club. The stall itself is another kind of umbrella. Wooden poles support a thick canopy of woven pandanus leaves, and it smells like every dish it's ever served. You duck under it, steam rising from the cooking pots, joining the rain mist in a kind of culinary fog. One old man slurps noisily and gestures to the back wall, where half-wilted banana leaves hang like coats after a storm. These are the loners, he says. Community rain covers for anyone caught unprepared. No rental fee, no ID check. Just grab and go. It's delightfully low-tech. You peek back outside. Another woman walks by, her toddler perched on her hip and her head shielded by an entire palm fan. Not the frond, an actual fan, like the kind usually waved lazily during ceremonies. It's big, circular, and tied with twine to a stick. It wobbles slightly in the breeze, but she walks like it's a crown. Historians still argue whether such fan umbrellas had symbolic meanings or were just clever recycling. Some say these improvisations marked status. Others claim they were just practical hacks that caught on. Either way, they worked, and they looked good doing it. You wander farther. A teenage girl adjusts her leaf cover while weaving a basket. At the same time, it's not just multitasking. It's a kind of calm resilience that tells you, yes, it's wet, but no, this isn't a problem. A teacher leads a group of children through ankle-deep puddles, each child holding a different umbrella. One has a bamboo tray over his head. Another has what looks like a turtle shell. One tiny genius is using 2 fish baskets tied together like a helmet. You can't tell if it's a prank or peak innovation. In ancient Java, weather didn't pause routines. It shaped them. Meetings happened under trees. Chores were timed with cloud patterns. And if it really poured, people simply stepped beneath awnings or trees or strangers' porches and waited, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. But no one got angry at the sky. That's perhaps the real umbrella of this world. Patience. You pass an old woman crouched near a mortar, grinding turmeric with the slow, rhythmic force of someone who's done it for 70 years, Rain drips down the thatch just behind her. A leaf juts out overhead, catching each droplet like a lazy drumbeat. She doesn't even glance up. You're offered a seat. A warm bowl of mung bean porridge, a leaf-wrapped parcel that smells faintly of ginger and banana, and a reminder that here, the wettest days bring the softest moments. You don't feel like a tourist anymore. You feel equipped. Not because of the banana leaf now sagging slightly in your grip, but because you're learning how to navigate a world that doesn't fight nature. It just moves with it. And as the clouds ease into a gentler shade of gray, you wonder, did anyone in this village ever wish for a collapsible umbrella? Probably not. You've barely finished your last mouthful of mung bean porridge when a familiar sound rolls through the village. Thup, thup, thup. Soft footsteps, followed by a low, scraping shuffle. You look up. A man in his 60s lumbers past, head crowned by something so wide it practically has its own time zone. It's a caping. No, not a typo for cape, though this hat certainly behaves like one. The caping is a massive conical hat made of tightly woven bamboo, shaped like an upside-down satellite dish with dreams of becoming a rice steamer. On his shoulders, nothing. The caping alone is enough to shield most of his upper body, including, miraculously, both elbows. It's light, it's breathable, and when the rain picks up again, it proves something else. It's waterproof. Not in the modern Gore-Tex sense, but in the I just waxed this with palm oil and it's holding up fine sense. These hats weren't thrown together overnight. Capings took hours, sometimes days to weave. The good ones had a slight downward dip at the center, like a little dimple, to keep the rainwater from pooling and randomly dumping down your collar. The extra thoughtful ones had a chin strap, because let's face it, nothing's more humiliating than chasing your hat through a flooded marketplace. You wander behind him, realizing you've entered a stretch of the village where hats aren't just accessories. They're identity markers. Some are sharply pointed like wizard hats, others squat and wide like upside-down walks. A few are adorned with colored tassels, which, you're told, were often reserved for village elders or folks who'd completed a ritual or two involving, well, fish you don't press. One man has woven his hat with strips of dyed rattan in a pattern so intricate it looks like something out of a designer catalog, and he's just using it to carry yams. That's the kind of humble flex you start to admire around here. Historians still argue whether the caping originated in Java or was borrowed from neighboring regions and lovingly reworked. What's not up for debate is how universal the thing became. From farmers to merchants to monks, everyone wore some version of it. Even the statues at ancient temples like Borobudur show figures with similarly domed headgear, suggesting that rain protection wasn't just practical, it had aesthetic clout. You pass by a workshop where a young boy is sitting cross-legged, copying his grandfather's hat-weaving technique. Bamboo strips crisscross with geometric precision, and you realize this isn't a dying art. It's a legacy, passed down like a bedtime story made of reeds and rainwater. One old man catches your eye. His caping has a small carved figure tied to the top, a bird maybe, or a monkey. He claims it wards off lightning. You don't laugh. After all, in a land of 1,000 superstitions, this one sounds fairly benign. Plus, it gives his hat personality. You ask if anyone ever used cloth umbrellas. He chuckles, chewing a betel nut. Cloth is for drying, not wetting, he says in a language older than irony. The rain starts up again, more insistent now, like a bored toddler smacking a tambourine. You duck beneath a thatch awning with a few others, all wearing their capings like turtles with spectacular headgear. Someone pulls out a roasted sweet potato and passes it around. Steam rises, someone yawns. And in this cozy little moment, you realize that in ancient Java, staying dry wasn't just a weather strategy. It was a shared rhythm. You lean back, letting the soft clatter of rain on woven bamboo lull you. Your banana leaf is wilting like a disappointed salad, but your spirit, bone dry. The rain stops not with a bang but a sigh, like the island exhaling after one of its many mood swings. You take a tentative step back into the path, leaf in hand, what's left of it anyway, and the village exhales with you. Around you, people begin to shed their improvised shelters. Banana leaves get flung aside, fronds tossed like yesterday's headlines. But others, you notice, keep their coverings on, not for rain, but for ritual. Protection isn't always about water. You watch a man step out from his home carrying what looks like a mat, yes, a literal woven mat, on his head. It's folded in thirds and tied with a coarse palm fiber string, balanced like a roof for one. He's not even blinking. It sways with every step, like a hammock strapped to his forehead. These makeshift covers weren't just for practicality. They were improvisations born of habit. No umbrella? No problem. People grabbed what was near: floor mats, baskets, roof thatch, even giant beetle leaves still slick with morning dew. You pass a woman using an overturned chicken cage. You don't ask questions. And the most loyal standby of all? The serbetin, a long cloth, usually slung over the shoulder, used for wiping sweat, shielding faces from sun, and when necessary, wrapped turban style to create a kind of soft dome against drizzle. Worn right, it channeled water away from your scalp like a mini aqueduct. Worn wrong, you got a face full of nature's blessing. Historians still argue whether this practice developed as a conscious adaptation to monsoon cycles or was simply a side effect of being surrounded by handy materials. Either way, the ingenuity is undeniable. You begin to see shelter not as an object, but as an action, something actively shaped in response to your surroundings. The muddy path ahead is scattered with the remains of these spontaneous umbrellas. A broken frond here, a sagging banana leaf there. But no one seems to mourn them. They're like takeout containers after a feast, useful, then gone. You continue walking and see two teenage girls crouched under a banyan tree. They're giggling, occasionally sticking their heads out into the dripping leaves, daring the rain to return. One holds an enormous jackfruit leaf, glossy and thick, like a spatula carved by a god. It's been cut and shaped with surprising precision, and she uses it to flick water at her friend. It's here, under this sprawling, sheltering banyan, that you hear one of the most curious stories yet. An elder sits cross-legged, hands folded, eyes half-lidded like a cat in a sunbeam. He speaks slowly, his words curling through the air like steam. He tells of Tudung Lepek, an ancient rain hood made from woven coconut fibers, stiffened with tree sap. Shaped vaguely like a mushroom cap, it was worn by coastal traders and was, supposedly, the closest thing Java ever had to a proper hat-umbrella hybrid. It didn't leak, he murmurs, but it itched like a demon. You imagine yourself in such a thing, heavy, scratchy, possibly home to a bug or two, and yet effective. There's a kind of honesty to it. Shelter here is never about comfort alone. It's about endurance. The girls laugh louder now, joined by a third who arrives wielding what appears to be a fish basket as a helmet. You feel oddly underdressed. Nearby, a small shrine stands quietly, its roof sagging under wet moss. A few offerings rest at its base: flowers, rice, a peeled banana. And resting beside them? A folded leaf, shaped delicately into a funnel. Not a real umbrella, but close. A symbolic one. As if even the gods might need a little help staying dry. You smile, realizing that in ancient Java, keeping dry wasn't just a task. It was a shared joke, a daily performance, an art form practiced in palm, reed, and improvisation. The clouds part, letting down a shaft of golden light so soft it feels like velvet on your skin. For now, you walk uncovered, but your eyes keep drifting to the next palm tree, just in case. The clouds haven't cleared for long before another breeze sweeps through the treetops, thick, syrupy, and full of warning. You turn just in time to see a small procession approaching, winding down the slope like a river of careful footsteps and rigid posture. This isn't your average village parade. There's incense, bells, and an absurdly decorative umbrella that couldn't protect a sparrow, let alone a human. It's a parasol. Gold-threaded, feather-fringed, held above the head of a young man with skin so smooth he might have never met the sun. 2 attendants flank him, each wearing ceremonial sarongs and stone-serious expressions. They're all dry, but not because the parasol is doing anything practical. Number, that thing's basically a fashion halo. You've stumbled across an aristocrat, or at least someone pretending very hard to be one. In ancient Java, umbrellas weren't always about the rain. For the elite, they were status symbols. The more ornate the parasol, the more you mattered. The higher someone held it over your head, the more power you had. These weren't tools. They were walking Instagram filters before phones were a thing. Historians still argue whether the first umbrellas here came via trade routes from India or were homegrown innovations turned symbolic. What's agreed upon is this: the umbrella was never just one thing. It could mean shelter, sure, but it could also mean, don't talk to me unless you've memorized your lineage. As the procession passes, the parasol flutters in the breeze, its silk panels catching glimmers of late sun. You catch a glimpse of its top, a carved wooden finial shaped like a lotus, hand-painted and unmistakably ceremonial. It's beautiful. It's ridiculous. It would collapse in 5 seconds during a real downpour, but no one's laughing. Everyone along the path stops, bows their heads slightly, and waits until the final sandal has passed. This umbrella is not for rain. It's for reverence. You follow at a distance, watching as the parasol bearer shifts his grip every few steps. There's a specific choreography to it, like he's been trained since toddlerhood to tilt just enough, to never shade himself more than his master, and to never, ever let the fringe brush a peasant's shoulder. You're not sure whether to admire the dedication or pity the shoulder cramps. The group turns toward a raised pavilion, where a small gathering awaits. Musicians strike up a slow rhythm on bronze gongs. An elder begins a blessing, chanting with the hypnotic pace of someone who knows the rain will return before he finishes. And then it happens, right on cue. A fat drop lands on your cheek. One, then another. The parasol doesn't flinch. It's not lowered, adjusted, or traded out. Instead, a boy appears from behind the pavilion with an actual functional cover. A giant, dome-like canopy of oil-rubbed bark cloth stretched over bamboo ribs. It takes 2 people to hold it steady, but it does the job. The aristocrat is whisked beneath it as if retreating to a mobile temple. The silk parasol, still hovering somewhere nearby, untouched by rain, guarded like a sacred text. You take shelter under a low tree, not quite sacred, but dry enough. Nearby, 2 women whisper about the color of the parasol's trim. Apparently, it's the wrong shade for this ceremony. You don't weigh in. Another man passes you, his shoulders draped with a shawl woven from tree bark, seriously. It's thick, water-resistant, and dyed with indigo and soot. A bark cloth rain wrap, not pretty but effective, and it won't blow inside out at the first gust, which is more than you can say for some designer umbrellas. In the corner of the pavilion, a priest, barefoot and stoic, lets the rain soak through his robe. He's not bothered. Some spiritual traditions here see the rain as purifying. To block it would be to reject nature's intention. And just like that, the parasol, the priest, and the downpour all exist in the same frame. One is soaked by choice. One stays dry by symbolism. And one just wants to look good. You stand there, half damp, half impressed. You're learning that in ancient Java, dry was never the full story. It was always about context, who you were, where you were going, and what the sky was doing to your social rank. The procession begins to disperse. The parasol is carefully folded, more collapsed really, and stored in a woven case embroidered with lotus petals and tiny gold beads. It will dry somewhere quiet, then wait for its next appearance like a stage actor between acts. You step back onto the path, pulling your sagging banana leaf closer to your shoulder. It's not embroidered, but it works. You keep walking. The path curves downhill, slick now with rain, and somewhere in the distance, thunder grumbles like a half-asleep buffalo. Not dangerous, just annoyed. Around you, the landscape tilts. Forest thickens, vines slither from trees, and moss carpets everything like nature forgot to sweep. You've entered monsoon country. In ancient Java, this was no joke. The monsoon wasn't a season. It was a second personality. Friendly one minute, feral the next. You squint at the sky, but it's no help. Gray on gray, then darker gray, with maybe a sliver of defiant blue pretending it'll come back. It won't. Another gust of wind slams into you like a wet towel, and just like that, the clouds open. Sideways. This isn't drizzle. This is rain with velocity. Your trusty banana leaf, once proud and crisp, now folds in on itself like a wilted taco. You duck under the overhang of a small rock shrine, barely big enough for two. There's already a goat inside. You nod at each other. Mutual agreement. You'll share the space if he doesn't chew your sarong. Out on the trail, it's chaos. But the calm kind. People aren't screaming or scrambling. They just pause. A man hunches under his ox cart. A vendor curls up beneath her stack of woven mats, which ironically are now protecting her. Two kids squeal as they try and fail to catch raindrops in their mouths. No one looks panicked. They've done this before. Historians still argue whether the Javanese had any true rain gear in the sense we think of it. Waterproof cloaks, dedicated shelters on sticks. Some claim early traders brought oil-treated fabrics, but they never really caught on. Why? Maybe because nothing short of divine intervention could handle a proper Javanese monsoon. Better to get wet and get over it. And then there's the wind. You see it in action now, twisting the tops of palm trees, turning fronds into whips. The few unfortunate souls still clutching banana leaves are fighting what looks like a losing battle with nature's inflatable tube man. A woman loses hers entirely. She doesn't chase it, just shrugs and walks on, soaked and serene. You admire that. You try it, and number. You're cold, squishy, and your left sandal is doing something that definitely isn't walking. So instead, you trudge forward, looking for better cover. You find it in the form of an ancient market hut, half leaning, half sagging, but still standing. A few others are already there, one man chewing on sugar cane, another sharpening a blade that looks too dramatic for daily use. Someone offers you a piece of woven bark to sit on. Someone else hands you a beetle leaf and gestures to chew. You politely decline. You've read things. The wind whistles through the slats of the hut. You hear talk of past storms, one so strong it ripped the temple bell off its hook, another that flooded the whole southern field for a month. Someone chuckles, pointing to the ceiling where the rain seeps through a precise hole and into a bucket, perfectly placed. "Old roof knows," he says. A boy appears with a basket on his head, not carrying it, wearing it, upside down. His face peeks out from the weave like a curious mushroom. He's bone dry, smug even. Someone throws a peanut at him. He dodges. The basket doesn't budge. You're witnessing evolution in action. The rain doesn't let up. It just commits. A steady wall of sound surrounds the hut, so loud it's almost cozy. The kind of noise that drowns out your thoughts and replaces them with rhythm. This, too, is a kind of umbrella. Auditory shelter. You look around, not a single modern umbrella in sight. But somehow, everyone is covered, in mats, in baskets, in dignity. Even the old woman sipping broth from a bamboo cup, her scarf tied like a makeshift turban, is managing to look majestic, despite being slightly damp and eating with her fingers. The boy with the basket hat sneezes. It echoes. Someone claps once, laughs. You're not just learning about umbrellas anymore. You're learning about surrender, not to defeat, but to flow, to rhythm, to a reality where staying dry isn't a goal, it's a lucky bonus. You close your eyes for a second, the sound of rain, the smell of soaked wood, the feel of warm bark under your hands. This is monsoon life, and it's not something you survive. It's something you learn to dance inside. The rain eases up, not because it's done, but because it's bored. A brief intermission. You step out from the hut's wooden embrace, squelching back into the open with the caution of someone who's had one too many slippery lessons in the last hour. The village market lies ahead, scattered like a painter's palette overturned mid-stroke. Bright tarps strung between trees, clay pots stacked 3 high, fish twitching in shallow baskets, and everywhere, people moving slowly through the slush, as if mud were just another surface to master. This is where ancient Java's true ingenuity shows itself, not in grand temples or gold-threaded parasols, but in the everyday chaos of the market. You spot them immediately. The hat tricks. Not metaphors, actual tricks. People are wearing their baskets, straw mats folded into crowns, sarongs twisted like inverted ice cream cones. One man, and you're not making this up, is walking around with a square piece of wood strapped to his head with vines. It gives him the look of an unusually polite turtle. At a stall selling spices, you watch a woman expertly fold a sheet of pandan leaf into a head tent. It balances perfectly, shedding water down her back like she's the roof of a temple. She's unfazed, handing over a bag of turmeric while catching a drop with her elbow like a seasoned outfielder. You duck between stalls, the smell of shallots and wet grain warming your nose. A vendor selling betel nuts gives you a knowing nod, as if to say, "Your leaf game could use work." Fair. Under a makeshift awning held up by bamboo sticks and aggressive optimism, you spot a man in the center of a small crowd. He's selling headgear. No, not hats. Solutions. Rolled bark hoods, foldable banana sheaths. One model made entirely of stitched palm skins, advertised with a grin, tested against 10 coconut storms. Historians still argue whether these kinds of gear were personal inventions or passed down from community elders. But local lore says if it sheds water and makes your neighbor jealous, it's worth keeping. A few kids run by with baskets over their heads, shouting something that roughly translates to rain race. One skids, slides, and lands with a splash. He sits there, laughing, basket askew, as if to remind you that here, getting wet isn't failure. It's the backdrop for fun. You find shelter next to a woman roasting cassava. The smoke coils upward into the damp air, curling around the rafters of her tarp like it too is seeking shelter. Her head covering? A flattened gourd shell, polished smooth and resting perfectly across her crown. It looks like the top of a soup pot. You try not to stare. Someone bumps into you gently, an elderly man with a walking stick and a grin full of teeth and wisdom. His rain cover is a square of tree bark tied at the corners and slung over his shoulder like a sash, but when he pulls it up over his head, it turns into a sleek little canopy. Origami, but from the forest. You help him pick up a dropped coin, and he rewards you with a story. Long ago, he says, people used to cover themselves with dried coconut husks during storms. The itchy kind. But they worked. And, he adds with a wink, they kept the monkeys away. You nod solemnly. Monkeys are a known menace. Around the next stall, a young girl sits cross-legged, weaving dried nipa leaves into a kind of crown. Not decorative, functional. She tests it by pouring water from a jug over her own head. It works. She beams, you clap, and she nods like a seasoned engineer unveiling her newest prototype. Rain begins again, gentler this time. Market-goers barely blink. The canopy of solutions rises around you, hats, hoods, hands, a living mosaic of dry-seeking improvisation. You find yourself beneath a shared palm tarp, pressed shoulder to shoulder with strangers. No one speaks. The rain taps softly above, like fingers drumming on a drumskin. Someone hums, a low, contented tune. You look down. Your feet are muddy, your tunic is damp, your banana leaf has dissolved into green mush. And yet, you're comfortable, because here, in the sloshy heart of a Javanese market, being dry isn't about umbrellas. It's about community, about resourcefulness, about knowing the next stall always has something you can turn into a roof. And sometimes, that roof is a bowl. The market fades behind you as you follow a side path into the hills, winding upward through a jungle that breathes mist. The rain has stopped again, but only technically. The trees still drip in chorus, and the ground squelches like it's chewing on every footstep. Sunlight pushes through the canopy in fractured beams, and for the first time all day, you feel warmth on your shoulders. You almost forget the wet cloth clinging to your back, until you spot a man reclining on a rock, shaded by what looks like a personal tent. It's not a rain cover. It's for the sun. In ancient Java, staying cool often took precedence over staying dry, especially for the privileged. Sun umbrellas, or payung tedu, were a whole separate universe, crafted from silk, cotton, or tightly woven fibers. They were dyed with natural indigo or saffron, edged with tassels or shells, and always large enough to shade not just the user, but their sense of importance too. You sit nearby as he adjusts his position. The umbrella is angled just so, casting a soft blur of shade over his face, but leaving his feet basking in light. He looks like he's mastered the weather itself. Sunshades weren't just vanity, though yes, vanity played a role. They signified class, calm, and, let's be honest, not having to work in a rice field at noon. If someone held a parasol above your head while you did nothing, that meant you mattered. A lot. Historians still argue whether the aesthetic influence came directly from Indian ceremonial umbrellas or developed as a response to Java's own extreme sun exposure. But in art from the Majapahit era, sun umbrellas often appear hovering over kings, noblewomen, and temple dancers mid-performance. Always poised, always decorative, rarely functional, but that was the point. You rise and follow a narrow trail toward the edge of a garden terrace. There, shaded by a grove of tamarind trees, a group of women are drying herbs on wide trays. Each of them wears a shallow hat, flatter than the capping, made from palm leaf fibers coiled like a cinnamon bun. It doesn't stop rain. It blocks sun, and that's what matters now. Nearby, a young man leans against a tree, crafting a new sunshade from bamboo ribs and dyed bark cloth. He's humming, dipping his fingers in a bowl of dye made from crushed fruit skins. His creation is less a weather tool, more a portable sky. It smells faintly of vinegar and mango. You try to shade your eyes with your hand. Poor technique, amateurish. One of the women laughs softly and hands you a frond. "Wrong season," she says, "but better than nothing." In this patch of post-rain sunshine, umbrellas become about display. A vendor walks by with an embroidered cover stretched between two rods balanced on her shoulder, part parasol, part billboard. The fabric reads, loosely translated, "Best tamarind in the province." Functional advertising. You sit on a low stone, grateful for the borrowed frond. Sunlight dapples your arms. Chickens cluck somewhere off-path. The warmth sinks into your bones like someone slowly pouring tea through your skin. And then, just to keep you humble, a sunshade flips inside out in a gust of breeze. The man holding it sighs, rights it, and adjusts his stance. Clearly not his first time. He's not angry. No one ever seems angry at the weather here. Back in the cities, you've heard, umbrellas were built with stiff reeds and waxed cotton, sometimes even featuring painted scenes, dragons, battles, lovers in pavilions. They were status symbols, yes, but also storytelling tools. One noble family was said to carry a parasol embroidered with their entire family tree. You imagine a dinner party where someone gets smacked in the face by great-great-granduncle's name. Down in the village, someone calls out a warning. The rain might return, but no one hurries. A girl lays her sunshade flat on the ground, sits on it, and starts peeling jackfruit. Her hat becomes a bowl. Her bowl becomes a roof. It's all interchangeable, and that's the real secret. In ancient Java, shade wasn't just for comfort. It was code. It told people who you were, what you valued, and how you carried yourself through shifting seasons. You lean back, eyes half closed, your frond now resting across your lap. Somewhere, a bamboo chime taps gently in the breeze. No one is rushing to escape the sun. Why would they? They've mastered how to carry it, cover it, and occasionally, just admire it. The trail narrows now, leading you toward a low hum, soft drums, occasional singing, and a scent in the air so thick it nearly has a melody of its own, something between incense and wet cloves. You crest a small hill and find yourself looking down at a wide clearing where people have gathered, not for trade, not for shelter, but for celebration. A wedding. You recognize it from the arrangement. Women in bright batik sarongs forming a circle. Men setting up long tables beneath low wooden frames, children darting between baskets of fruit and piles of folded cloth. And rising above it all, umbrellas, dozens of them, not one alike. These aren't rain covers. These are sacred. You walk slowly into the crowd, careful not to disturb the layout. In the center, over the bride and groom, hangs a massive ceremonial payong, its cloth thick with gold thread, tassels long enough to brush the couple's shoulders. The handle, longer than most spears, is carved from teak and etched with spirals and sacred birds. Here, in ancient Javanese weddings, umbrellas weren't accessories. They were blessings, carried above newlyweds to signify divine protection, family honor, and yes, fertility, Because what's a ceremony without multitasking symbolism? The groom smiles nervously. The bride glances up at the umbrella like it's a sealing of fate. And perhaps it is. You're waved over to sit with a group of older women. They're gossiping gently, shelling nuts, and pointing out relatives with the kind of precise judgment only aunties can achieve. One of them offers you a slice of fruit wrapped in a leaf. You thank her. It's sour, but politely so. Above the tables where food will soon be served, smaller parasols hang from ropes, not to shield from sun or rain, but simply to look beautiful. Their undersides are painted with spirals and flowers, motifs meant to ensure joy and long life. If it rains, no one will move them. They'll just let the water trace through the brush strokes like blessings in motion. Historians still argue whether this use of ceremonial umbrellas descended from Indian wedding traditions or arose from animist beliefs native to the archipelago. Some suggest the umbrellas echo the ancient Mount Meru, a symbolic cosmic mountain held above people's heads to unite earth and sky. Others say it just looked majestic. You spot a group of young boys holding the wedding procession umbrellas, taller, skinnier, adorned with colored flags at the tips. They practice lifting and lowering them in sync, each movement timed to the rhythm of a slow, hypnotic drum beat coming from a group of musicians seated in a semicircle of gongs and bamboo flutes. One boy missteps, his umbrella tilting sideways, brushing a food tray. No scolding, just laughter, an aunt gently recentering his arms, and another round of the song. And there, off to the side, you catch something special. An old man, eyes closed, gently repairing a parasol with golden thread. His hands are steady despite his age. You ask how long he's been doing this. Since before my first teeth fell out, he says, smiling. And before the first wedding I ever cried at. There's reverence here, yes, but also lightness. The umbrellas are part of the ceremony, not above it. If one breaks, it's fixed. If one falls, it's caught. If the rain comes, and it might, no one will panic. They'll dance a little closer, share space, and trust that the umbrellas, however ornamental, are more than decoration. They're intention. The clouds threaten, grumble a little, and then pass. The couple rises, hand in hand, and the umbrellas follow, floating above them like sacred satellites. You find yourself moved, not by the grandeur, but by the humility of it all. Here, protection isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about choosing to carry a bit of beauty overhead, even if it doesn't stop the weather. Because sometimes, the meaning is enough. As the couple walks past, the crowd tosses petals. One lands on your head. You leave it there. The wedding music fades behind you, replaced by the ambient hush of twilight. Birds settling into their trees, frogs testing out their nighttime voices, the occasional creak of bamboo as the island cools. You follow a gentle path, not marked on any map, winding down the edge of a quiet ravine. You're not really walking anymore. You're drifting. And then, almost hidden by a curtain of vines, you find it. A thatched shelter, small and crooked, with one stool, one flickering oil lamp, and one very old man beneath it. His beard is white, his feet bare, and his eyes, though cloudy, sparkle when he sees you. Without speaking, he gestures to the stool. You sit. Rain begins again, just a whisper at first, then a rhythm. Not harsh, not sharp, just soft taps on the leaves above, like someone politely knocking on the sky. The old man doesn't offer you a roof, but he does offer you a story. It begins, of course, with a storm. Long ago, he says, a great flood threatened to wash away a mountain village. The people panicked. They climbed trees, clung to goats, even tried shouting at the clouds. nothing worked. Until a young girl stood in the center of the square and held up a sieve, not to stop the rain, but to trick it, to show the sky she wasn't afraid of getting wet. "If you cannot shield," she said, "then laugh." The rain, baffled by her calm, passed her by. It's a myth, sure, but one with weight. He chuckles. Sometimes the best umbrella is attitude. You sit with that for a moment, feeling your banana leaf turn slowly to mush in your lap. In the distance, lightning flashes silently, too tired to shout. Historians still argue whether this tale is part of Javanese oral tradition or just something the old man made up yesterday. But in this moment, you don't care. Because under this leaking thatch, where your elbows are damp and your heart is full, the line between myth and memory blurs. He tells more stories about crocodile dung sunscreen, about lovers who only met during rainstorms, about umbrellas carved from bone. Probably not true. Possibly. But they fit the night, and the patter of rain and the weight of a day lived mostly damp. Eventually, he falls quiet. You sit there together, not talking, not moving. You've learned about fronds and fans, hats and hoods, shields made of bark and baskets. You've seen umbrellas that couldn't block a single drop but carried entire lineages. You've shared spaces with strangers under tarps, under trees, under stories. And now, you sit with the simplest truth of all. Ancient Java didn't need umbrellas the way we think of them. It needed rhythm, adaptation, community. It needed people willing to get a little wet and laugh about it later. Another drop lands on your nose. You wipe it away, slowly. And the old man whispers, not unkindly, "Still here?" You smile. Yes, still here. The rain tapers into mist, and mist into silence. Your feet dangle just above the earth, toes cooled by the lingering damp. Somewhere nearby, a bird gives one last call for the night, not expecting an answer. The old man has closed his eyes, and you can't tell if he's sleeping or simply existing with more efficiency than the rest of us. You sit still. Breathing slows, muscles soften. The weight of stories settles like a blanket pulled gently to your chin. Think back now, over the leaves, the hats, the laughter, the girl with the jackfruit crown, the goat who shared his shelter, the rice field that shimmered like a mirror when the clouds opened. In ancient Java, no one chased dryness like a prize. They built around the rain, leaned into it, even wore it. They turned weather into ritual, inconvenience into rhythm, and umbrellas, real or imagined, into poetry. And you? You've walked barefoot with them. So, let the day fade behind your eyelids. Let the drip of water on thatch lull you further. Let the flicker of a faraway oil lamp blink its last. You're warm now. Not dry at all, but warm and ready. Good night.